Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I welcome you all back to your weekly webinar. Today we will be discussing about the most important current affairs that were in the news in the past week or so. Good evening once again. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I hope all of you are ready for this webinar to begin. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes. Let's other also join in and then we'll begin the class. Perfect. Good evening. Good evening, guys. Good evening, everyone. I hope all your preparation is going fine. I also hope that all of you are a part of the Byju's Exam Prep IAS Prelims 2022 test series. I hope all of you have been tracking your scores, have been looking at how you are scoring, if you're able to get good marks or not. If you're learning something new, then also I'm very sure that you would be revising it and trying to ensure that you don't do the same mistake again. Good evening. Perfect. Seemed like a good time to begin. So I welcome you all once again to today's weekly current affairs webinar. This is a place where in the next couple of hours, we'll be trying to discuss the most significant current affairs that were in the news in the last week or so. Now, it becomes difficult for us to choose what are the things that we are going to be discussing because there's a lot of different news stories that are around. So we usually pick up the ones which we think are the most significant from the examination point of view. As I was saying, the Byju's prelims test series for IAS 2023 is going on in full steam. As you know, every Sunday you have these tests where you can actually check how prepared are you. You can test your knowledge, you can learn a lot of new things. You will also get a detailed report card along with your strengths and weaknesses so that you can see where you have to focus and what are the areas where you're actually doing good. You can also compare your preparation with others since you will get an all India ranking as well. Perfect. So today, what we have for you is these topics. We have selected 8 topics for you, the 8 significant ones that we want to be discussing. First, we'll be discussing about the Climate Change Performance Index of 2023. We have a lot of things about climate change that have been in the news. We have the UNFCCC COP27. We also have these Climate Change Performance Index. We'll be talking about that specifically. Then, we'll be talking about CITES COP19. Yes, COP27 is in the news, but that is for the UNFCCC. Apart from UNFCCC, also we have some other organization that is in the news, which is CITES, CITES. We'll be staying in this CITES. India made a statement about freshwater turtle, which are in danger of extinction. So what did India say? We'll discuss about that. Then we'll discuss the big news, that is the world population hits 8 billion mark. We will not want to remember the number. The numbers are not important. But for us, it is important to see the emerging trends in population. Emerging trend means how is it that the population is increasing or decreasing? How is it that the nations around the world will see in the coming years a population patterns change? What impact will it have on India and in other parts of the world? Then we'll also be discussing about government's decision to release a digital personal data protection bill draft. As you know, the personal data protection bill was recently withdrawn by the government. It was a bill earlier in the news, but the government withdrew it without giving any reasons. Now the government has again released a draft and maybe the final bill will come in very soon. Then we'll be discussing about the issue of electoral bonds. It is in the news for a couple of reasons. First, it is in the news because new numbers have come out, more than 10,000 crore rupees being donated. So we'll discuss what that is exactly. Number 6, we'll be talking about NASA's Artemis mission. Artemis mission remains in the news time and time again because it has been tried 3 times now. The first 2 times it was tried, NASA was not successful. Now NASA was successful in sending Artemis in the 3rd attempt. So we'll be discussing what is Artemis, why is it significant, why is it that NASA wants to send this spacecraft. Then we'll be discussing about the new airport launched in Arunachal Pradesh, what is the significance of that airport, And in the end, topic number 8 will be Indira Gandhi Prize, that is given to Pratham NGO. We'll be discussing what is this prize and also what is Pratham NGO. So I welcome you all. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine, and I hope all of you are now ready for this session to begin. Just confirming once, the audio and the video are absolutely fine, right? If you can just confirm the audio and the video are fine. Right. Perfect, 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 perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for confirming. Now others can stop. I have confirmation from a lot of you already. Perfect. So let's begin with the very first topic. The very first topic that we have at our hands is the Climate Change Performance Index of 2023. What exactly is this? Why is it significant? And what does it talk about? Now, climate change has been the most important event, or has been the most important news story that has been covered very, very widely in all the newspapers and magazines over the past few years. This is the most imminent danger that the entire humankind is facing, and the entire world talks a lot about fighting against climate change. There are, however, different versions of how the countries want to fight against it. Some countries say that the developed nations should pay the money for this. Some nations say that it is everyone's responsibility. We have also discussed in the last class itself about the UNFCCC COP27, where the world around us has actually come together, decided to give certain promises to each other. How are we going to control our capacity of greenhouse gas emissions? Now, this index that we talk about, the Climate Change Performance Index, it is a kind of a ranking that ranks the countries on various parameters. Mainly, the parameters that they take into consideration is how well are the nations performing in the fight against climate change. As simple as that. How well are the nations performing when it comes to controlling the greenhouse gas emissions? How is it that the nations are actually working towards it? This is the ranking. India has secured 8th rank in this rank. India's position has improved. This is the Climate Change Performance Index. Now, who publishes this? This is not published by the UN. So UN, United Nations, has no connection to it, number one. Secondly, not all the nations in the world are taken into consideration. Only a few nations, 59 nations, are the ones that are taken into considerations. So this index is an independent monitoring tool for tracking the climate performance or climate protection performance of the nations around the world. As I said, this actually takes into consideration what are the efforts being made by the governments across the world. If they have made certain promises that we will try and protect the environment, that we'll try and curtail our greenhouse gas emissions, are they actually doing something about it or not? These are the things that are usually taken into consideration. They also try to enhance transparency in international climate politics. If you remember, if you remember, we had talked about a concept called greenwashing. Do you remember that? We did talk about the concept of greenwashing. What was greenwashing? If you remember, greenwashing was a concept that was that the nations around the world should not make false promises. They should be transparent about what efforts they are making in the fight against climate change. So that was greenwashing. This performance index, or this climate change performance index, is doing almost the same kind of a thing. It is trying to bring transparency. How are the nations working towards it? How is it that the nations are actually fulfilling their commitments that they have made? This ranking takes into consideration 4 parameters. First, it takes into consideration the greenhouse gas emissions. How much emissions are the different countries making? Then it takes into consideration renewable energy. How is the country working towards that? Use of energy and climate policy. These are the things that are taken into consideration, and that is how a ranking is put together and given to the various nations. Now, we are more focused on India. So let's talk about what the report says about India, and then we will see what the report says about the rest of the world as well. Let's first talk about India. India has been given the 8th rank in 59 nations and European Union, and we have improved our ranking. This means India is one of the few countries that is actually going on the correct path when it comes to fight against climate change. If you remember, In the Paris Climate Change Summit that took place in 2015, nations around the world had made a lot of promises called the NDCs, the Nationally Determined Contributions, where the nations around the world made promises. How are they planning to control climate change in their country? Every country made very tall promises that we'll give a push to renewable energy, we will stop deforestation, we will stop greenhouse gas emissions, etc. However, once those promises were made, most of the nations forgot about those. Most of the nations did not work in that field. India was an exception. India is seen around the world as as one of the very few nations that are actually working towards their nationally determined contributions. In India, also specifically, a lot of push has been given to renewable energy. If you look at how India has grown in terms of solar energy production, you will see how India has actually given a huge push to solar energy. The prices of solar energy generation has come down drastically, because of which India is getting good rank in these kind of indices. So India remains one of the few nations that is actually working in the direction of climate control very, very well. India, as I said, has earned a good ranking because number one, of our push towards renewable energy, and secondly, because of climate policy. Now, what is climate policy? Means what are the different types of policies that the government is introducing to combat climate change? There are many, many examples. For example, I'll just give you one instance. The E20 by 2025 mission. As you know, the government of India has decided that we will achieve 20% ethanol blending. Remember, the government of India plans to have 20% ethanol blending in petrol by 2025. Now, earlier, this target was to be achieved by 2030. Now, the government of India has preponed it, made it tougher for us, and said we will achieve it by 2025. This is an example of climate policy, an example of policy by the government that is in the interest of the climate. Then, apart from that, India, as I said, has increased its climate target in the nationally determined contributions. India also announced last year in Glasgow that we will achieve net zero by 2070. That means that India is doing better than most other nations. However, that does not mean by any way that India is on the way to achieve the target. Now, what is the target? If you remember, nations around the world have set a target that we don't want to increase the average temperature of the earth by over 1.5 degrees Celsius. Maximum 2, but preferably we should curtail the temperature rise by about 1.5 degrees Celsius. The problem is, even if India achieves all its goals, even if we achieve all the goals that we have set out for ourselves, even then we might not be in a position that we will achieve this target of controlling our rise in temperature to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. That remains a big, big concern. So on one hand, India is doing very well, better than most other nations, especially with respect to renewable energy, solar, etc. On the other hand, even that might not be enough when taken in the larger context of things. When seen around the world of how the global target is, even that might not be enough, which is not a great sign. Also, if you look at how the nations around the world are performing, you will see nations that you usually expect, such as Denmark, Sweden, etc., are the ones that are actually performing better than most. One other red flag for India, red flag means one thing that is actually going against India, is to increase its oil and gas production by 5%. So India will in fact increase its oil and gas production, which is not in favor of how this climate policy should actually be released. Now, just to give you an idea, this is how the countries have actually scored. As you can see, there's Denmark, Sweden, Chile, India is here. So these are the scores that India got. As I said, these are the 4 parameters on which the nations around the world are giving the score: greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy, energy use, and climate policy of the government. Also, if you look at how government of India is trying to curtail climate change, there are a lot of factors, or there are a lot of landmark events that took place. Just to give you a timeline of how we have reached this stage. In 2007, 2007 means it was at the time of Dr. Manmohan Singh government. 2007, Prime Minister's Council of Climate Change was made. This was a special body which had to give advice to the Prime Minister about how to combat climate change. In 2008, the Government of India launched National Action Plan on Climate Change. I have a question in front of me. Give some examples of climate policy. These are examples only. For example, Government of India launched the National Action Plan for Climate Change. Then the Government of India launched the Voluntary Emissions Intensity Pledge, said that we will voluntarily say that we will control our emissions, so on and so forth. India is one of the few nations that have set a very aggressive target for generation of renewable energy. That is why India is actually seen at the forefront of the fight against climate change. Uh, let's see if you can answer this question. It's a pretty simple question. I'll give you your options as well. Read this carefully. I'll give you 15 seconds. Your time here starts now. %65% people got the answer correct. This is D. This is D. As we discussed, there are 4 parameters. I told you multiple times. Look here. Greenhouse gas emission number 1, renewable energy number 2, energy use number 3, and climate policy number 4. These are the 4 parameters. So in place of net zero year, it has to be climate policy. So policies made by the Government of India to fight against climate change. That is the 4th parameter. Before we jump on to the second topic for the day, let me take a few questions. The first question I had, some examples of climate policy. I gave you examples. Government of India launching the National Plan for Climate Change. The Government of India launching policies such as E20, that is ethanol blending. Government of India launching policies such as giving a push to solar energy by giving solar subsidies. So those are all policy measures only, which can be given as examples of climate policy. Then I have a question. On one hand, India appreciated for its efforts by these kind of independent institutions. On the other hand, institutions like WEF through Environmental Performance Index are blaming us for our action. Who should we analyze? See, in this index also, as I said, India is not just given good marks. India has also been criticized here as well. So no index actually criticizes, or no index says only good things. Every index gives a certain ranking, gives certain scores. Now, in some parameters, you are supposed to get good score. For example, in this aspect also, India got good score with respect to renewable energy, with respect to climate policy. But at the same time, the report does say that we are still not doing enough to meet that 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. So it's not that the two reports are contradictory to each other. Every report would have some good parts, would have some bad parts. So I don't think that there needs to be a question, why is it that one report is criticizing us and another report is saying good things about us? It is how the reports work actually. Perfect. Any other question with respect to this, do let me know, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Perfect. Okay, let me go back to this page. Okay, let me go back to this page. Yeah. So I have this question. No country ranked first, second, and third on the index. So usually the first, second, and third rank. So basically, what it shows is these three are usually kept vacant because, as per the index, no country that achieves this point should be considered as first, second, and third. So basically, they keep the first three empty so that the nations can actually learn that no one is actually getting the ideal score. So they keep the ideal score positions as empty. That is how it works. Perfect. Okay, I'll take just one last question and then we'll go ahead with this. One other comment that I'm getting is, has India accepted this? See, when these rankings come, it's not about accepting or rejecting. These rankings don't ask for a country whether you want to accept it or not. For example, if I tell a person that he or she is a good boy or a good girl or a bad boy or a bad girl. I'm not asking for your approval. It is my view. So it's not that the nations have to accept this or reject this. So it's not a question of government of India accepting or rejecting this. Now, the next topic that we wanted to give here is about the COP19 for CITES sites. Now, one COP that was a lot in the news was COP27. COP27 was for UNFCCC. Now, just in case you are confused, COP means Conference of Parties. COP stands for Conference of Parties. So it's a very generic name. Generic name as in it's actually a name given to any meeting where all the member nations come and sit together. So CITES is an international treaty which we'll just talk about. CITES is an international treaty specially to ensure protection of wildlife species, to ensure that nations around the world collaborate with each other. If any animal that is endangered, it should not be sold from India to some other country. The nations should share the responsibility of not harming these animals. This is what the CITES treaty is all about. The CITES treaty recently had its COP19. COP19 means 19th Conference of Party, 19th such meeting. So the word COP is very usual with all these international treaties. You will find this very often. So don't be confused. Why is it that it was used with UNFCCC and not CITES? It is the same. Now, CITES, as I said, is a convention on international trade in endangered species. In very simple terms, endangered species, be it flora or fauna, means animals or plants. In both of these, if there are certain endangered species, then those species should not be traded in. They should not be sold or bought from one nation to the other. To stop that from happening, the CITES Convention has been signed. The CITES Convention is also known by one other name, that is called the Washington Convention. So it is the same. Washington Convention or CITES, as I said, it is to protect the endangered plants and animals from threat in international trade. This came into force in 1975 when over half of the nations accepted this, that yes, we will try and protect these. Now, this CITES treaty has actually put obligations on member nations to ensure that you make laws for protection of endangered species in your country and also ensure that there is no trade that is happening amongst these species. If you look at what the Indian government said in this particular meeting, that is what is important for us. In this meeting, the government of India said, or not just said, the government of India told the entire world that the government of India is taking multiple steps to protect the endangered species. And they gave multiple examples. For example, the government of India talked about the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. It's one of the most significant laws for wildlife protection in India. As you know, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 actually has multiple appendix. For example, it has multiple schedules. First schedule gives the name of those animal species which are the most protected. If anyone harms or kills animals mentioned in the first schedule, they are given a very, very strict punishment. Then we have Schedule 2, some lesser punishment, so on and so forth. So Wildlife Protection Act is the act that actually ensures protection to wildlife species in India. It does this through different schedules that the government of India has. For example, this Wildlife Protection Act also bans trade in all the elephant ivory. Ivory means elephant teeth that you have. So that is also banned under this. Apart from this, we are focusing on elephants because the government of India, in its address, talked about two animals. I'll just show you the slide. They talked about Asian elephants and they talked about freshwater turtle. These are the two animals that were mentioned by the government of India representatives in their speech. That is why we are focusing on these two, Asian elephants and the turtle. The government of India said that we are trying to protect elephants as much as possible and we are making different efforts for that. For example, the government of India has been using microchips to identify legally owned captive elephants. Now, captive elephants means the ones that are actually owned personally by a few people and they are allowed to be kept with them. The government of India wants to differentiate between those elephants which are owned by some people legally, and the other elephants which are not owned by people. How is the government trying to do this? Government is actually using microchips. Now, uh, I'm not sure if you have seen this. In most of the Indian cities now, when you go on the roads and you might see certain cows or buffaloes, you might have seen on their ear there is a very small plastic chip. Have you seen this? Have you noticed this ever? If you actually go around the world, you will see, or not around the world, but if you see in your cities, cows, buffaloes usually have this small plastic chip in their ear. Yes, most of you have seen this, right? So that, what is that actually? That is something that is just to keep a track of them. How many of them are counted? So, for example, the government of India says that we have these many elephants in India right now. So, how do we count them? When you have counted something, you have to put a tag, right? Just to remember, is this elephant already counted or not, so that you can actually get an idea of how many species or how many elephants are there. Also to protect them, to track their movement. So government of India says that we are using microchips for this. Also, the government of India has launched Project Elephant. Now, what is Project Elephant? There are multiple such projects launched by the government of India for protection of certain species. There are multiple other projects. One of them is Project Elephant, which is run with collaboration of Wildlife Institute of India specifically. Then government of India has taken many other initiatives for elephants as well. For example, Ministry of Environment has released a document on best practices. Also, they have released a portal on human elephant conflict. Human elephant conflict means when humans and elephants come face to face, there's a conflict. Humans believe that they are in danger, so they try to harm the elephant. Elephant believes that they are in danger, they try to harm the humans. The best way to protect the elephant is to ensure as little coming together or as little face to face contact of humans and elephants. So this conflict has to be reduced. The government of India has also laid plans for elephant corridors. What are these? Elephant corridors means those pieces of land where the elephants can safely walk and there will be no interference by anyone else. Elephant corridors means that piece of land that is earmarked for elephants. So government knows, government agencies know that this is the area where the elephants walk, so we will not interfere there. So government of India has actually done this. Now, unfortunately, it's a very unfortunate incident. There are a lot of national parks, a lot of wildlife sanctuaries in India. Because national parks, wildlife sanctuaries are very, very big. A lot of them are so big that railway tracks go through them. I don't know how many of you have seen this. Um, if you live in Dehradun, or if you, let's say, don't live in Dehradun, if you live, if you go to Dehradun, or you will see that the train usually goes, and if you're going from, let's say, somewhere in UP or somewhere in UP Dehradun, you will see the train usually goes to Rajaji National Park. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have seen this. So when it goes through Rajaji National Park, there are instances where actually elephants come on the railway track and there's an accident between the train and the elephants. It has happened very, very regularly. Very, very regularly. Now, why is it happening regularly? Because there is no clear demarcation of where the elephants will move, because of which the government is now developing elephant corridors. Elephant corridors, as in, so that they can make sure that they can keep the elephants safe out of the contact of human beings. Also, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 prohibits illegal capturing, killing, buying, and selling of animal and animal parts, etc. It is a punishable offense, which is how the government is trying to ensure that the government does not, that the elephants are not killed or captured. Now, this CITES, CITES that we talked about, it actually makes three different categories of animals. First category is called Appendix 1. Appendix 1 are those animals which are the most protected. In most of these animals, you cannot have any trading. In most of the Appendix 1 animals, no trading is allowed. Only 3% of these species, only 3% of such animals are where trading is allowed. Then we have Appendix 2. Appendix 2 are those animals which are not really endangered, but their trade is controlled. Their trade is controlled. Now, when we say controlled, that means government keeps an eye on this. Government sees how exactly is it that the trade is happening. All these things are taken into consideration. So the trade is controlled. Then we have Appendix 3. Appendix 3 means those animals where some nation has actually asked help from some other nation. Means any nation that has actually taken the help of other nation to control the uh, black marketing or to control the smuggling of animals, that comes in the third appendix. So these are the three appendices. First one, it has mainly endangered species which have to be protected at any cost. Second one, the trade is allowed but it is still controlled. Third one, where the nations actually ask for each other's help for proper transfer of animals to make sure that the trade is allowed but it should not be done illegally. Now, in this COP of 19, now COP 19 of CITES, apart from India making their statement, a lot of other things were discussed. For example, the countries around the world said that certain species are in danger. For example, hippopotamus, straw-headed bulbul, red-crowned roof turtle. These are the ones that are in danger, and these should be the one that should be transferred to Appendix 1. They are right now in Appendix 2. When you transfer them to Appendix 1, what will happen? There will be more protection given to them. Then, red-crowned roof turtle. This is already considered as critically endangered by IUCN. This is the one which is found only in India and Bangladesh. It has to be protected because its numbers are coming down very, very drastically. Also, animals are being traded for illegal consumption. International trade is happening in animals, and that is why the countries around the world have to keep an eye on this. This is a very, very big organized crime where nations around the world have different gangs which trade in these illegal animals. That is why the countries around the world have to come together and be protected. These poached animals are traded year after year, and over half of the cases are never found. Over half of these animals are never found. They're either killed, consumed because some people want to eat them. There are a lot of different stories. Uh, I'll just give you an example. So, for example, in China specifically, it is a huge problem. In China, if you see, there is a problem that the rich people, and it's not just China, there are many countries around the world, the rich people have, I don't know if this is based on science or there are no scientific evidences towards it, but rich people have this habit that they actually buy these exotic animal species which are endangered because eating them is believed to be aphrodisiac. Now, I don't know how many of you know aphrodisiac. Aphrodisiac means a substance which, if you consume, will increase your sex drive. That is called an aphrodisiac. So many rich people in China, it's an emerging trend in China, many nations around the world, that if you eat these exotic species, exotic animals, it will act as an aphrodisiac, which is not really based on science, but that is also because of which the trade in these kind of animals is becoming a big, big problem. Then animals are hunted for their ivory, that is the animal teeth, using which a lot of different things are made. All these things are a problem which the nations around the world have to come together to solve. Now, as I said, apart from Asian elephants, the government of India told what are they doing to save elephants. One more species that the government of India focused on was red-crowned roofed turtle. It's a freshwater turtle that is mainly found in India and Bangladesh, and in some numbers in Nepal as well. This is mostly found in the Ganga region and occurs in the Brahmaputra basin as well. Right now, National Chamba River Gharial Sanctuary is the only area where it has a good population, but it is still under threat. That is why nations around the world are trying to protect that species as well. Let's try and see if you can answer this question, and then I will take your questions on this topic. Read this very carefully. Read this carefully. I'll give you time to answer this. Have you read this? Let me know once you are done reading this. I'll start your timer. Done? Perfect. Time has started. 67% people are correct. Pretty simple question to answer. The answer is D. All the three appendices are correct. We discussed about this. There are three types of appendices as per CITES sites, and all these three are absolutely correct. Before we come to topic number 3, let me quickly take up a few questions. Okay, I have a question from Veena. Can't we put forward an idea that countries which score good in climate change index will be rewarded? But the question is, rewarded how? Who will give the money? No country wants to give anyone else money, right? So if you don't have any source of reward, how will you give a reward? So I'm not sure how that will work. Then I have a question, sir. Solar energy price has decreased means what? Decrease for ourselves or for exporting? So decrease for ourselves and exporting ourselves mainly. So what has happened is, whenever there is a new technology, let's say solar, when solar energy generation was a new technology, whenever you produce something, you make instrument, you make solar cells, etc., it's very, very costly. When you actually ensure that the production increases, the scale becomes bigger, obviously the cost of production comes down. When the cost of production for solar cell, solar panel come down, then the cost of solar energy generation also comes down. So the government can now sell solar energy to people at a cheaper price. So when I say cost of solar energy generation has come down, that is mainly because the cost of equipment has come down and we have cheaper technology available. So people can also now get solar energy at a much more subsidized price, or a much lower price. Sanjeev was saying, are those microchips RFID? Yes, they are RFIDs. Manisha is saying, can you explain how microchips will help the government to keep a track of the elephants? What if those are removed? So, as I said earlier, they can be removed. It's not that they can't be removed. But again, the government of India, at least till the time that they are alive, at least till the time that the elephants are not captured, they will help the elephants. They will help the government in tracking them. There's always an alternative to a technology. You can say, what if the people kill the elephants, remove those? Yes, it can always happen. But at least till the time that they are stuck with the elephants, the government of India can keep a track of them. And the government of India may track down the people who are trying to hunt these elephants. Then I have a question from Tehreem. In Indian Express, there was an article stating India abstains to vote from ban in ivory trade. I am not sure what the question is in this. So it's a statement. If you maybe can explain the question. Chishti is saying, why first is correct? Please explain. I told you these three indices. The first appendix is species that are threatened with extinction come under appendix 1. These are the ones which are the most highly protected. These are the ones where trade is almost not allowed. Only 3% of them can be traded. So the first appendix is the one that is filled with animals which are near extinction. Then I have Ashia is saying, cheetah migrated to India falls under which appendix? Cheetah, tiger, lion, all of these are under schedule 1 only, or appendix 1 only. Ajay is saying, how is LiDAR technology used to save animals? So see, those who have question about LiDAR or LiDAR, so LiDAR or LiDAR, whatever you want to say, stands for light detection and ranging. Again, this is a technology that is mainly used to identify things that are far away by the use of light. These are light sensors mainly. So in the night time when there's dark, you can actually use these sensors to keep a track of animals that are moving around, keep a track of things that are far away. That is how it is actually used to keep a track of them. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. The third topic that we want to discuss is something that you would have read in the newspaper. It was covered widely. That is, the world's population hits the 8 billion mark. Now, This in itself is not an unexpected news. The population is increasing. Obviously, it's increasing at a good speed. Not so good for the earth, but yet it is increasing at a fast speed. So it's not something that was unexpected. Also, the population will continue to increase in the near future. Yes, the rate of growth of population has come down. So what we need to understand is, how is it that the population growth patterns are changing? How is it that the speed of increase of population is changing? So on and so forth. Now, the world's population that has increased and has reached the 8 billion mark as per the UN. UN says that it took 12 years to grow from 7 billion to 8 billion, and it will take 15 years to reach 9 billion. Now, this number itself suggests that now the rate of growth of population is decreasing. Means the speed at which the population was increasing, that has come down now. Meaning that we are still increasing in numbers, but the speed is not that. But there are a lot of reasons for that. See, when you have a world which is becoming better in terms of education, when you have a society which is earning more, people or families, when they are financially better off, and families which are educationally better off, will always have a much controlled rate of reproduction as compared to the others. So with increasing levels of education, with increasing level of income, we usually see a decrease in how the population growth is actually seen. Also, if you look at nations around the world, if you look at different areas around the world, there are a few regions only in the world where the population growth rate is increasing drastically. That is in Africa mainly. Sub-Saharan Africa, that is the place where we have some of the world's poorest people. They are the areas, or these are the areas from where the population is increasing drastically. The reason why the population increases very fast in the poor areas is, when you have a poor family, for them, giving birth to a child, for them, every child is mainly seen as a earning member of the family. Even in India, you will see that the richer people, the people who can actually afford to take care of their children, the people who can afford to have great education for all their children, they are the ones who are reproducing much lesser number of children. On the other hand, the poor families which can't afford to take care of the children, they are the ones who are reproducing more and more and more, because for them, their children are more of an earning member in the family. So the population growth trends are very, very different. In some nations in Europe, Japan, etc., they are concerned because their population is aging. Their population is getting old, they are not reproducing enough. On the other hand, nations such as Africa are still very, very young, because they are the ones who are actually increasing in numbers. As per UN, 60% of the global population lives in a region with fertility rate below replacement level. Replacement level has been set at 2.1. Replacement level means a level at which the population will replace itself. Replace itself means the number of people who are dying will be equal to the number of people who are taking birth. So the population will actually stabilize. That is called a replacement level. If the average reproduction rate of a country goes lower than the replacement level, then you can say population will start to decline. If the average reproduction rate of countries is higher than the replacement level, or more than 2.1, that means the population of the country will keep on increasing. So replacement level, that is 2.1, is being seen as a parameter to decide if the countries or the world's population will increase or will decrease. Reproduction rate means, on an average, how many children will a woman give birth to. That is the uh, that is the fertility rate. So fertility rate, if it goes above 2.1, that is where the population will increase. If it goes below 2.1, that is where the population will start to decline. 2.1 is seen as the replacement level. In 1990, 40% of the world lived in areas where replacement level was lower than 2.1. Also, as I said, the poorer the nations, more are the chances that those are the nations where we have huge population growth. For example, as I said, if you talk about those nations which are the poorest right now, the sub-Saharan African nations, they are the ones who have the highest fertility rate. Also, there are a bunch of countries which account for over half of the world's population. Only 8 countries around the world, India obviously included in that, Only 8 countries around the world, if you add them together, make up half of the world's population. That is Democratic Republic of Congo, Egypt, Ethiopia, India, Nigeria, Pakistan. Then we have Philippines, and we have the United Republic of Tanzania. All of these together, these 8 nations together only, can actually have a population of half of the entire world. Then international migration is also very, very high. People are moving from one place to the other for various reasons, economic purposes, for refuge, etc., etc. All of that has been captured in this. The report also makes a special focus on India as well. That is, the report says that India's population growth rate is stabilizing. Stabilizing means India has hit the fertility rate of 2.1 births per woman, which is a replacement level. That is why it was expected earlier that India's population will continue to grow at a fast pace before it starts to come down. But now experts say that if you look at India's number, India's population will not grow at such a fast pace as it was expected. Because if you leave out 3, 4 states in India, almost all other states have already controlled their population. That is why in India also the population growth rate will not be as high as it was expected. India is still growing at 0.7% per year, and we will surpass China by 2023. The reason why we'll surpass China by 2023, as I said, is that China, as you know, has been following a one child policy for a long, long time. The reason why China has been following the one child policy for a long, long time is they have been, or they wanted to control their population. Because of that one child policy, now the Chinese government is facing issues of very short labor force. They are facing issues of people only having one children in their household, not working enough. They have a high pension bill, etc. So India is not going in that direction in one child policy, but we are still trying to control our population as well. Also, India right now is home to the world's biggest adolescent population. What is adolescent? Adolescent basically is a range of 14 to 18. That is adolescent. So India right now is the world's 14 to 8 or 10 to 18 basically is the adolescent population in the entire world. India is the largest in that sense. Now, one more thing here. The reason why India's population is increasing, whenever you see the population of a nation increasing, it is both a good sign and a bad sign. It is a bad sign in the sense that people are still reproducing more and more kids, so there will always be pressure on the country's resources. On the other hand, when the population of the country is increasing, it is also a good indication. Why? Because it indicates that your healthcare facilities are becoming better and better. See, when the countries have their population which is increasing at a fast pace, that just means that people are living longer lives now. Just imagine earlier how 60, 65, 70 was the age there when parents, grandparents could not even walk. They had to relax. They had to be taken care of. But now, if they actually follow good health habits, many of them are able to work by in 70s, 80s as well. So our healthcare facilities are improving. Our way of taking care of our health is improving, because of which India right now is seeing an issue where our total population is increasing. That has got to do with the healthcare facilities becoming better. In fact, if you look at countries such as Japan or many European countries, they have a problem that their average age is very high. So in Japan, their average age means an average age of a Japanese is almost now reaching 50. The reason why their average age is so high is because people in Japan, they don't die because of the great healthcare facilities that they have, because of which again the population increases. So population increase has got to do with a lot of different factors and not just giving birth to more and more children. Now, while the population of the world is increasing and is expected to increase even further, it is expected that 2100 will be the year when the population stabilizes and will starts to go down. It is expected that the top of the world's population would be somewhere near 10.5 billion, and then it will start to come down. Now, while the total population of the world is increasing, as I said earlier, the population growth rate is decreasing. The population growth rate is decreasing. The population growth rate means the rate of growth of the world's population. This is a kind of practice question that you can expect in the mains examination from this particular topic. This, you can try and write an answer to this in about 200 words. See if you would be able to write an answer to this. What are the possible implications of the emerging population trends in India in the next few decades? So you have to write about how the population growth in India, population is still increasing, but the growth rate is decreasing, meaning that after a few years, we might have lesser number of people entering the workforce in India. We might have higher pension bills to pay. The government welfare scheme will cost more money because the government now has to spend more money in taking care of the old age people. Before we move on to the next topic, you can ask your questions till then. Okay. Anuj has a question. As many child are born within a day, how can it be possible to count population touch 8 billion on a date? See, these are all estimates. You cannot say, "Arey, UN is wrong. There was one more child born on this." These are estimates taking into account the rate of growth of population. So you can't question, oh, it was not on 15th November, it was on 16th November. This child was not counted, that was not counted. These are all estimates. Okay. Then I have a question, why China not in 8 countries? I don't know. There's no logic to it. If you include China also, it will go above 50%. They just had to make 50% in 8 countries. They can choose anyone. So I'm not sure why it's a problem. Why not you are putting China in those 8? Put China also. Say 70% of the world's population comprised of these. There's no logic to this. Then I have a question, why India does not introduce one child policy? I'm not sure why we need to. See, the more things that you put a compulsion on, the more things that you ban, the more are the chances people will find a way around it somehow. The more things that you're banning, that you can only have one child. See, in China, there is a lot of problem with the one child policy. There are a huge number of issues. For example, people are not getting their partners to marry. Then we have a lot of issues in China where people actually, because they have only one child, and they want that particular child to be a son. So because of that one child policy, a lot of female infanticide has actually come into the picture. Now, because so many have wanted the one child to be son only, now they don't have enough girls to marry in the society. So now there are reports that say that Chinese are bringing girls from outside the country, paying them huge amount of money just to come and marry them. There are a lot of these kind of issues. So it's not an ideal situation to have a one child policy. China is regretting that. So I don't think there is any logic to that, that you should go ahead with these. See, the more things, as I said, that you impose on the people, the more are the chances they will try and find a way around it. Rather than that, a better situation is always to educate people, to tell them how it is a bad idea so that they themselves can take decision. Would you want a government that imposes restrictions on everything? Because tomorrow, if the government comes up with a one child policy, now you might say government should ban this also, that also. So at the end of the day, you have to take a call of how much interference we want from the government side. Then I have a question, how population is increasing and population growth is declining. Why can't it happen? Total population is increasing. The rate at which it is increasing, that is declining. So for example, in the last, as you saw, the last 1 billion people were born in 12 years. Next 1 billion people will be born in 15 years. So the rate at which 1 billion people are adding, that is reducing. So we are slowly adding people, but we are still adding people. So it's the same thing. The total population is increasing, obviously, but the total population is increasing at a stage that it is actually not adding to our population growth rate. Then I have a question, are there any incentives for population control in India? There's an incentive to have lesser children spend lesser money, because your children will actually consume a lot of your money. So if you say that is an incentive, There are some initiatives started by certain state governments. Certain state governments had this policy that if you have more than 2 children, you will not get government jobs. So these are some kind of initiatives that did come up from certain states, that having more than 2 children, government jobs will not be given, your benefits will not be given. So these are some of those things that have been come out from the government, but no incentive as such has come out that if you have lesser children, you will be getting more money. Nothing of that sort as such from the government. Then I have a question: as inflation increases, there should be decrease in birth rate because it is difficult to take care of children in high inflation. It's your assumption. See, there are different definition of taking care of children. What is taking care of children? You can say sending a child to a great private school is taking care of the children, but you then send the child to a free government school. The child is still going to the school, you're not spending that much money. So taking care of children, ideally, yes, people should reduce the number of children. But when you say because inflation is increasing, you have lesser money in your hand, you should not produce more, you are not considering the fact that people's salary also increases. It's not that salary remains the same their entire life. If I'm earning an X amount today, I might earn more than that after 2 years. So it's not that I'm earning the same amount, and the same amount I have to now take care of more than one children. It's not that how it's work. It's not that easy. So Raza is saying, what is the question demanding? Question is demanding, as I said earlier, what are the implications of emerging population trend in India? I told you, population trends in India, number one, the number of youth will decrease in the coming year, so you have to give them more skills. India government has to be ready for more pension, more welfare schemes, because the number of old age people will increase. The government has to improve their healthcare facilities because more older people means more healthcare bill, etc. These are the implications where the government has to spend much more money. Then I have a question: didn't COVID have any impact on these estimates? COVID did have an impact. It's not to say that it didn't have an impact, but see, when you talk in billions, 8 billion, and then you talk about COVID, yes, a lot of people died in COVID, but when the scale is so large of the entire world's population, there is no connection in between the two. So that is why you can't say that COVID has reduced the world's population drastically. Yes, it has hurt a lot of society, but it's not that the population has come down drastically. So yes. Okay, let me see if I have any more question. Then I have a question. Difference between replacement level and total fertility rate. See, fertility rate, as I said, means on an average, a woman will give birth to how many children? That can be 4, 5, 6, 7, 10. Total fertility rate is how many children are being given birth per women in the country. Replacement level means if that fertility rate becomes 2.1, that is a replacement level. Replacement level means 2.1. This is the fertility rate at which the population will replace. The dying population will be replaced by the people who are now taking birth, so population will stabilize. If the fertility rate goes above 2.1, that means your population will increase. If it goes below 2.1, then the population will decrease. Simple. Naresh is saying, don't you think we should adopt state-wise population-related policies rather than pan-India policy like one-child policy? See, government policy is a policy. Even if you adopt it state-wise or India-wise, how would it be different? You are saying Indian government should not make one-child law, but UP government should make a one-child law. Then how does it make any difference? It's the same thing. See, making policies is fine. Family planning is a policy of the government of India for a long time. There is no problem making a policy. But when you make a law, make something compulsory, that is when the problem starts to happen. Because there are a lot of implications. There will be female infanticide. There will be people who will be preferring one child over the other. That will become a big issue. Okay. Then I'll take one last question. 15 Finance Commission devolution formula includes demographic performance. Will this help population control? I don't think so. I don't think so. See, understand this. Government is not reproducing children. You have to understand something. will you take it upon you? And I'm just asking generally any one of you. Will you reproduce lesser number of children thinking that because of me, finance commission will give my state lesser money? Will you do that? Will you take that decision in your bedroom? Just imagine, huh? Why will you take that decision? Let me produce lesser children. Why? Because my state will get lesser money from finance commission. Will you think like that? No, you will not. So when you won't think like that, why did you write that in the paper also? I think logically, not think practically. You can't think or you can't write anything for the sake of writing. You have to think practically. So again, if you think that you will to take that step, then salute to you. You are a real champion that you will control your family's population just for the state. Great, amazing. I am not sure many people will do that, right? Perfect. So let's go ahead with the next news that we have. The government of India has now introduced digital personal data protection bill draft. So basically, if you go back to this issue, personal data protection bill is a long pending issue. In simple terms, what this is exactly, let's try and understand. When you use social media, you use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all these kind of things, you give a lot of data to them. You enter your email ID, your name, your gender, age, you put on your photos, your videos, your reels, etc. Now, that is your data. You have shared that information with those companies. Now, the question is, does that company have the right to use that data or not? If they do have the right, then how can they use that data? Do they have any limitations on them or do they not have any limitations for that? For that, the government of India tried to bring a law called Personal Data Protection. Personal Data Protection Bill was specifically for this. How will your data be used, or what are the limitations on the use of your data by these companies? Now, what happened was the government of India introduced this bill earlier. There was a lot of debate on this bill. Some people liked it, some people did not like it. So government of India finally withdrew that bill in August. So this year in August itself, the government of India said, okay, we are not happy with this bill, we are taking it back. They said we will introduce a better bill now. This is what they have done. Government of India again have introduced the bill on the same topic, saying that it is a better bill now. It's a draft bill. So usually whenever the government of India introduces any big bill, whenever the government of India introduces any big or important bill, they first publish a draft. Draft means that this is what the bill is, and they ask for people to give feedback. For example, there are mail IDs that are given. You can go to government websites also. You can go to MyGov app also, give certain comments on this if you want some suggestions for the government. This is what the government has, and they released a draft bill. If you look at the story of how it all started, the story starts in 2018. In 2018, the government of India made a committee called the B.N. Sri Krishna Committee. B.N. Sri Krishna, retired judge. Under him, there was a committee that was formed to suggest how to protect the information of people in India. They suggested the Personal Data Protection Bill. 2019, 2020, the government of India started to work on this. 2021, the government said that we are preparing the bill. 2022, earlier this year, the government introduced the bill, but August 2022, the government withdrew the bill. As I said, the government withdrew the bill in August 2022, thinking that no, this is not a good bill. We still want to make certain changes. So this is a timeline of this. Now the government has finally reintroduced the draft bill. Now let's try and understand what are the key features of the bill. Also, please understand something. This is a draft version of the bill. Draft version means what the government has proposed. Usually what happens, and please understand this, usually when the government is in majority, when I say every government is in majority only, but when the government is not in coalition, like BJP government is not in coalition right now, they have the majority in Lok Sabha, they can easily pass the bill. In Rajya Sabha also they have the numbers with support of other parties. So usually when we have a single party government, when they are not dependent on anyone else, whatever draft bill that they produce is usually the final version of the bill only. They don't have to make any changes in this. Let me repeat what I said. Usually when you have a one party government only, like the one that we have, they are not dependent on any other political party. In that case, usually they don't have to change the draft version. Whatever draft that they give is usually the final one, because even if anyone suggests certain changes, they don't have to make it. However, just in case, just in case the government of India does make certain changes in the draft and then take it to the final bill, for that you have to be careful. What we are reading is just the draft version of the bill. Final bill that actually passes may be slightly different, so do keep a track of that. Now, what are the important pointers of the bill? First, it talks about data principal and data fiduciary. What does it mean? Data principal means individual whose data is being collected, so means you. If you are giving data to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you will be called data principal. Data fiduciary is the company to which you are giving the data. So let's say Facebook or Instagram or wherever you're putting your data, whichever website that you have, they will be called data fiduciary. Second, personal data and its processing has been defined. So for example, they have told what data will be called a personal data, like your photos, videos, your name, your email ID, address, etc., phone number, that will be called a personal data. This is a definition that they have given. Individuals informed consent, meaning that if, let's say, Facebook has to use your data. Now, you may ask, why would Facebook use your data? See, Facebook does use your data for many things. I'll tell you how. For example, there is a company who is selling cars or who is selling bikes. Okay. Now, this company will come to Facebook and they will say, please give us details of those people who put a lot of photos of cars and bikes on their profile, because they are the market that we are aiming for. We will sell our car and bike to them. This can happen, right? A company can go to Facebook and say, please give me the list of those users that you have that always put car and bike photos, because we are the ones who want to sell them. Now, if the Facebook company has to give this data to the company, they will charge money in return. So the bill says to give that data, to exchange that data, they first have to take consent of the user. So your information, or before it is being shared, they will ask you for your permission. First, you give your permission, only then the data will be shared. Also, you have the right to withdraw the permission also. Means it's not like you have given permission to Facebook once and it will always be like that. No, you can withdraw permission also if you want, as per the bill. Then, the bill also ensures that individuals should be able to access information in the easy language. For example, let's say Facebook sends you a letter on your email. Do you want us to share your information or not? And that letter is written in French or some language that you don't know. Then how will you be able to read it? So if they're asking for your consent, that should be asked in a simple language that is written in the 8th schedule. So one of the languages written in the 8th schedule, that has to be the language that should be used. Data protection officer, data auditor, meaning that Facebook and all these companies which are collecting your data, they have to appoint an officer. Officer will be called data protection officer. Data protection officer means it will be their responsibility if, let's say, you find out that without taking your permission, Facebook has given your data to someone, then you can file a complaint to this officer, who will be called a data protection officer. Data protection officer will be appointed by these companies. They will take in those complaints. If they are not able to resolve this, then you can go to the government as well. You have the right to erase your data as well, and right to nominate someone else also. If you don't want, let's say, your data to be on Facebook, Instagram, you have the right to delete all the data. You can nominate someone else also to delete your data. Cross-border transfer means if your data is being sent to some other country, if Facebook is selling your data to some other country, then they have to first seek the government of India's permission. Only if the government of India actually gives the permission, then the data will be transferred. There are financial penalties involved. If companies don't abide by this, penalties can go up to 500 crore rupees. These data protection laws are very, very strict in nations such as the European nations, Australia, etc. In India, we are not really concerned about this. The reality is in India, people say, oh, even if my data is with Facebook, what will Facebook do? Facebook should give me 500 rupees, take all the data that I have. I don't need it, right? That is what people's mentality is in India. But if you look at developed nations, Europe, etc., they have very, very, very strict data protection law. Now, in this particular draft that has come out, there are some people who are criticizing this as well. For example, people are saying that the government has not clearly defined many things. The government has not clearly defined what is absolutely necessary, what is compulsory, what should be done, what should not be done. That is one big problem. Second, people are saying government's monopoly means government decides everything. Government decides whether or not you can send data outside India or not. Government decides how the complaints will be resolved. Government has been given the power to decide a lot of things, which is not great. Exemption provisions. Government has been given the power to exempt many agencies. So if the government wants, they can exempt many companies from this bill. They can say, no, this company doesn't have to do this company doesn't have to do this. Also, government organizations can also be exempted. For example, you give a lot of data to government also, like Aadhaar. When your Aadhaar card was made, you gave all your personal data to UIDAI. Your biometrics, your fingerprints, everything was given to UIDAI. That is a personal data only. Government has the power to exempt UIDAI from that, so they can use and sell your data. So government's power to exempt organizations is also something that can be misused. No protection against data breach means if, let's assume, Facebook does sell your data without your permission. Let's assume this does happen. Facebook has sold your data without your permission. Then what will happen? Then the government will impose a fine on Facebook. But will you get some money? No, nothing. You will not get anything. It is between Facebook and the government. So you are not getting any financial penalty in return for that, even if it is you whose data is being stolen, whose data is being transferred. That is also a problem. You don't get any protection against the data breach. It is the government that will impose a fine, but you will not get anything. A practice question that you can expect from this topic is, despite being one of the largest data producers in the world, India still lacks a comprehensive data protection legislations. Critically analyze. Okay, I have a question. Please tell about the right to intertransferability and right to be forgotten mentioned in the bill. Right to be forgotten means, as we discussed, if I want all my data on Instagram, Facebook, all these websites, if I want that to be deleted, I should have that right. I should have the right that I want to delete all that data. That should be allowed. Then intertransferability means that if I want to transfer all my data from one website to the other and tell the last website, please don't keep any track of my data, it should be allowed. Right now, what happens, even if you can delete your Facebook profile, it can still store your data without your information. So that has to be changed. Then I have a question, how has the draft improved over the previous draft? So previous draft did not have a lot of these specifications. It did not talk about the right to be forgotten. It did not talk about how the government of India will control the inter-country transfer of data. Those kind of things were not there. Then I have a question, why Meta will sell my data? Why does anyone do anything? For money only, na? I gave you an example. If an advertiser wants your data for money, Facebook will sell it. And if they sell it, how will I know and where will I complain? So how will you know? You have to see, if you get, for example, let's say you get a lot of ads, phone calls calling you saying that, sir, do you want to have a credit card? Now, how did they get your number? How did they know that it is your number? How do you get these emails that I'm giving you a free loan? Means your data has been given by someone. Now, this is where the problem starts. As to how or where you can complain, as we discussed, each of these companies will have to appoint a data protection officer where you can go and complain. Right to erase, I just discussed. Right to erase means you have the right to request Facebook to delete all your data. Full stop. Right to nominate means you can nominate someone else to delete your data on your behalf. Simple. Then I have a question. Critically analyze means how to write an answer. Critically analyze means you have to give both positive and negative points. You have to write why is it happening, and what is a good point about it, and why is it not happening. So critical analyze means you have to be critical. You have to, let's say, for example, when you see movie critics, what do movie critics do? Movie critics, when they analyze a movie, they tell you what the good points, they tell you what the bad points also. So critical analyze means the same thing. Tell good points and tell bad points also. Then I have a question. What is the rationale behind the government exemption provision? See, any law that the government brings in, they will always want to keep some powers with themselves. Government will always have certain powers to give exemptions to organizations so that they can use your data in whatever way that they want. They can say this for national interest. For example, let's talk about Aadhaar. Because of Aadhaar, the government of India has been able to give direct subsidy transfer. Because of Aadhaar, the government of India says they have been able to identify people for welfare schemes, etc. So they are using that data. So government has to give exemption to those organizations which the government claims will use your data for your own welfare. So that is the government's always, whenever, whichever law that they make, the government will always keep certain power with themselves so that they can actually use it later on. Perfect. The next topic that we want to discuss is about electoral bonds. Electoral bonds is something that I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. Electoral bonds is a scheme that came up in 2017. In simple terms, in order for people to donate money to political parties, now you can only donate up to 2,000 rupees cash. If you want to donate to a political party some money that is over 2,000 rupees, and you have to buy electoral bonds. It's very simple. There are certain branches of State Bank of India which have been earmarked. You can go to those branches. You can say that I want to buy electoral bonds. You have to give them the money. They will ask for the details, KYC. Now, they will give you this paper which will say that you have, let's say, submitted 5,000 rupees, 10 lakh rupees, 1 crore rupees, whatever. That paper will not have your name. They are called bearer bonds. They are called bearer bonds. Bearer bonds means those who are bearing it, they are the owners. For example, if I have a 500 rupee note right now, the 500 rupee note doesn't have anyone's name. If you are holding it, it is your note. If I'm holding it, it is my note. That is called a bearer. Bearer means those who are bearing it, those who are holding it, they are the owners. Electoral bonds don't have anyone's name. For example, if I buy it, I will be the owner. I can now donate it to a political party. Now the question is, can I donate it to any political party? No. I can donate it to registered political parties only. The condition is only those political parties eligible who got at least 1% votes in the last general elections. Those who got at least 1% vote in last general elections, those registered political parties are the ones to whom I can actually give these bonds to. This is how the electoral bond looks like. It is told, as I said, to certain branches of the State Bank of India. Now, the electoral bonds specifically remain in the news for a lot of reasons. Ever since electoral bond schemes have been launched, opposition parties hate this scheme. Why? The opposition parties say most of the money goes to the BJP, it goes to ruling party only. Why? They say that if someone goes to State Bank of India to buy the bond, now the question is, who owns the State Bank of India? It is the government only. So for government, it is very easy to call State Bank of India and ask, who is the person who is buying the bond? Give me the name. And they say the government can pressurize those people, give the money to us only and no other political party. That does not apply to opposition parties. They can't do anything of that sort. So opposition parties don't really appreciate electoral bonds. Now, the interesting part is opposition parties, in fact, went to the court. They went to the court in 2019 saying that electoral bond scheme should be banned. But what did the court say? The court said that no, elections are very near. May 2019, we had the Lok Sabha elections. So court said no, elections are near. Let the elections go by, then we will hear the matter. 2019 elections went by, every year we have so many elections, and still the matter is not decided by the court properly. So it is, and now if you go to court again, court will say now 2024 elections are coming, so we can't hear the matter again. Now, electoral bonds, many people say, are still a big threat in terms of no transparency being maintained. In the sense, electoral bonds don't have anyone's name. No one knows where the money is coming from. The only good part, it is coming through a bank. That is fine. But what is the source of that money? Who is giving that money? That is still not transparent enough. So that goes against the entire idea of transparency. Now, the reason why I'm discussing this is recently the government of India made a very slight change in the electoral bonds. What was it? So earlier, what used to happen, electoral bonds are not sold across the entire year. That's not how it works. It's not that you can go to SBI anytime and buy these bonds. So what happened was earlier, they were only sold for 10 days in January, 10 days in April, July, and October. So only 10 days in these months you could buy electoral bonds, or additional period of 30 days when the government specified during the general elections. Because elections are the time when the political parties need most of the money. So because need most of the money there, the government said that, okay, when the elections are near, 30 days before that also you can go and buy electoral bonds. Now what the government has said, apart from that, additional 15 days the SBI will sell these bonds, 15 days before the state elections and the union territory elections. So earlier the law was 10 days in these months, electoral bonds will be sold, and 30 days before Lok Sabha election, they will be sold. There was no provision of state elections. Now the provision is 15 days, 1-5 before the state elections also, these bonds will be sold. So this is the major change that has been introduced. This was the government scheme or government notification, sorry, through which this actually happened. The government said that now additional period of 15 days shall be specified by central government in the year of general elections to legislative assemblies of state and union territories with the legislature. So additional 15 days will be given. Now, electoral bonds can be bought by whom? Electoral bonds can be bought by Indian citizens or Indian companies. They can be given to registered political parties who got at least 1% votes in the last general elections. Now, electoral bonds have always been very controversial ever since they have come out. Government of India supports this. Opposition parties oppose this. Opposition parties say the government can pressurize people into giving them the money only because they control the SBI. They will control everything. So that has become a big contention. And this has only added up because of these facts that most of the money coming from electoral bonds usually has gone to the ruling party at the center only. It has gone to the BJP only. So the people who are in the opposition, they are not wrong when they say that only government is getting all this help. So that has still remained a problem. It has not been resolved. Let's see if you can answer this question. Let's try and answer this and then we'll go ahead. If you read the question, let me know. I will start the timer. Done? The time has started. And your time is up. Only 30% people got this right. D is the correct answer. None of these is correct. First statement says it can be donated to any registered political party. No, I told you. Registered political party that has got 1% votes at least in the last general elections. At least 1% votes in the last general election. So no, first is wrong. Second, can be bought from SBI. We have been discussing this time and time again. Third is again wrong. Why? Third is wrong because electoral bonds can only be bought, it can only be bought in the multiples of 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, and 1 crore. So if I have to buy electoral bonds of 10,500, no, I cannot buy this because the 500 multiple will not be given. So it has to be 1,000, 10,000, these multiples. So that is why all the given statements are wrong. The correct answer here would be D. The correct answer here would be D. Before I move on to the next one, let me take a few questions. I have a question from, I think, the last topic. Why these platforms don't reveal clearly that they use our data and all? Can you have to understand, why would a platform reveal you that I'm using your data? If you are selling someone's information to earn money, would you tell that person? You would not want to tell that person. That is how businesses work, right? They want to earn a profit. They don't want to sell this to you. If they tell this to you, they think that they won't be able to earn money. That's simple. Then I have a question. Can electoral bonds return to SBI Bank for exchange of money? Yes, you can. Then, doesn't the low eligibility criteria for electoral bonds allow for money laundering? It's not a low eligibility criteria. Getting 1% votes is not easy. See, if you look at the number of people who vote in the general elections, they are somewhere close to 50 to 60 crore people. Getting 1% of votes from them means 50, 60 lakh votes. That is not easy. So I won't say getting 1% votes is very easy. So yes, you can only always make it difficult, but I don't think it is very easy to actually get 1% votes. Then I have a question. Does election commission has any role in the electoral bond? Yes, they had to keep a track of it. Electoral bonds can only be deposited by the political parties in those bank accounts which are registered with the election commission. So every political party has to have their bank accounts that are registered or that are informed to the election commission. Those are the bank accounts in which the electoral bonds have to be deposited, not any other bank account. Then I have a question. Why bonds have been exempted from registered parties getting lower voter percentage? Because that can lead to corruption. For example, anyone can register a political party in India. I may register a political party in India just because I want to divert someone's money as my political donation. There are thousands and thousands of registered political parties in India, but only a handful of them actually fight the elections. So if you open it up to all the registered political parties, it might lead to a large scale corruption, because then the people will misuse that just to open political party just to get that money. So that can't be done. There has to be certain eligibility criteria at least to make it. Perfect. So the next thing or the next topic that I want to discuss is from science and tech, from NASA's Artemis mission. Now, Artemis mission has been in the news for some time now. The reason is NASA has been trying to send this. Unfortunately, they were not successful. Now, this is the third attempt for Artemis 1, which has now said to be successful. Now, what is Artemis mission? What NASA is saying is that this is their heaviest rocket. They are sending this mission to make sure that in the future they can again send humans to the space. Now, yes, they have had human landing in the past. For example, between 1969 and 72, there were 6 Apollo human landings. But now they want spacecrafts to be much, much more powerful. They want spacecraft that can go beyond the moon and that can actually have human astronauts so that they can conduct a lot of experiments. This is now being tested by NASA. The Artemis mission that is being sent, what is this exactly? Let's try and understand this. This is a very simple, normal moon orbiter mission. It is a very simple moon orbiter mission. Now understand this. Space missions that go to different planets or heavenly bodies like Mars, Moon, etc., they are usually of two types. Either they are called orbiter or they are called lander. Orbiter are the easier ones. Landers are the difficult ones. As the name suggests, orbiter means it will not land on the moon. Like the Mangalyaan that we sent to Mars. It was an orbiter. It is orbiting the Mars. It did not land on the Mars. Landing is difficult. Lander is the next level technology. So Chandrayaan 1 was successful. It was an orbiter. Chandrayaan 2 that we sent, it was half unsuccessful because the landing did not work properly. So now what will happen is NASA is sending this Artemis. It will just orbit around the moon. Now you might ask, sir, if it is just orbiting the moon, then why it is so important? By moon we have gone so many times. Moon orbiter has become common. Now why is it so much in the news? Why is NASA saying it's very important, very important? Because usually when the orbiters are sent, they don't have to come back. They like Mangalyaan, Mars orbiter mission, all these Chandrayaan 1, when these orbiter missions are sent, they don't have to come back to the Earth. Artemis 1 will be the first such orbiter mission that has to come back to Earth. This is the difference. So Artemis 1 is an orbiter, but it will have to come back to the Earth. That is the challenging part. Now, right now in this Artemis mission, humans are not being sent. Humans are not being sent. So what will happen in this mission? Human dummies are being sent. Human dummies are being sent, and we'll have to see if this is successful or not. The idea is we can have, if this is successful in the future, we can have missions for Mars, Jupiter, etc. Why? See, if we have a plan of establishing human life somewhere else in the solar system, you have to build heavy rockets which can actually transport a lot of people together, which has not really been achieved by any of the space organizations. With Artemis mission, it's very, very heavy. So the idea is if it is successful, we will be able to send a lot of people all together. That is why it is very, very important. As I said, it is a lunar orbiter mission, but it has to return back to Earth. That is the most complex part. It has to return back to the Earth. That is the complex part. Orbiter is not the complex part. Now, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to make it a success so that in the future, we can transport humans to the new worlds. Not meet aliens, but yeah, transport to the new world. Now, you might also have this question, but sir, moon landing was done in 1969. So what is new in sending humans, right? But if you were able to achieve moon landing in 1969 itself, then how is it that it is experimented again? See, the difference in that technology of 1970s is, back then the idea was just to send humans there. They can stand, click a photo, make a video, tata bye bye, selfie, done. It was not about experimenting or sending machines, etc. When you are not sending any heavy machine, when you're just sending humans, you are not using very heavy rockets. But now if you really have to conduct experiments, now if you really have to see if it is possible to set up human life in any way, for that you have to send a lot of huge machines, conduct experiments, set up a lab kind of a thing. Then for that, you need very heavy rockets, and that is where the technology has to actually improve drastically. So yes, we already have the technology for moon landing, etc. That was fine. But now the question is, along with them, how many humans can you send, first of all? Secondly, how heavy machinery can you send, which will actually be successful in conducting experiments? This mission will try to search for water in all forms, for hydrogen, etc., which can be utilized as a source of energy as well. It will conduct some biology experiments in the space as well. And as I said, it will have dummy passengers. It will not have real human beings. The space suits, etc., in plastic form like a human body, but it will not have human beings because we are still testing it. What will happen? This spacecraft will first orbit the Earth sometime, and then after orbiting the Earth, then it will go and start orbiting the moon, and then it will come back to Earth. Basically, this is the idea. First orbit the Earth, then go orbit the moon, and then it will come back and it will fall into the Pacific Ocean, and from Pacific Ocean it will then be retrieved. That was Artemis 1 that is just being launched. After it becomes a success, if all things go to plan, NASA is saying we will also go ahead with Artemis 2 and Artemis 3 also. Artemis 2 will be in 2024, which will have humans. It will have human astronauts. It has to check whether with humans also it is working properly or not. It will be doing the same thing as Artemis 1, nothing different. Just it wants to check whether or not Artemis 1 and 2, both of these are working properly or not. Then Artemis 3 will go in 2025 and it is expected to ferry astronauts to the moon for the first time since Apollo mission. So again, Artemis 1 not landing on the moon, just orbiting the moon, coming back without humans. Artemis 2 again doing the same thing, going, orbiting the moon, coming back with humans. Artemis 3 finally going to the moon, landing to the moon with humans and conducted heavy experiments which were not done earlier as of today. Okay. On this question, let me see if you can actually answer this. Read it carefully. It's a question that was asked earlier as well. Read this carefully. This, in fact, is a question that was asked by UPSC earlier. It's a previous year question, in fact. Okay, I'll switch off my camera for a few seconds. You can read it. Read it carefully. Let me know when you have read it. I'll switch on my camera. Done? Done? Let's start. And your time is up. 31% people got this right. This is actually B. 2 and 3 are correct. First one is wrong. Why? The Cassini-Huygens is actually not for Venus. It is for, what do you think? Those who gave the correct answer. It is for Saturn. Yeah, Saturn. It is for Saturn. Yeah, Saturn and not Venus. And that is why this was the correct option. Second and third are correct. Before moving on to the next one, let me quickly take a few questions if I have any. Next, we will be discussing about the Arunachal Pradesh's new airport inaugurated by the Prime Minister. Let me quickly take that. If you have any questions, relevant questions, I mean, you're free to ask. Perfect. See, these kind of questions that you see, the match the column question or the table form question, these are common with respect to space missions. Usually the space mission questions are like these only. If any spacecraft, any space mission is in the news that year or in the last year, they will ask about that, or they'll give a match the column. They might also ask you about which mission is from which country, like which is of NASA, which is of other European Space Agency or Japanese Space Agency or the Russian one. So it depends. These are the usual kind of question that you get. These are not the ones which are not very difficult. Perfect. Okay, let's move on then. The next topic that we want to discuss is that the Prime Minister recently inaugurated the airport in Arunachal Pradesh. Now, this airport that is being inaugurated, as such, the airport and the airport news itself is not very relevant for the examinations. Because see, in the UPSC examination, you don't get these kind of questions. What is the name of the new airport in Arunachal Pradesh? So that will not happen. So that does not really matter. But what we want to discuss here is specifically how is it that the government in the past few years has been focusing a lot on infrastructure development in the northeast part of India. Now, I don't know how many of you are watching this class from northeast part of India: Assam, Meghalaya, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Sikkim. If you're watching from there, great. If you're not watching from there, if you have never been from there, I can tell you a couple of things. So I have had a pleasure of I've been to Sikkim, I've been to Assam, I've been to Meghalaya. Now, when, this is from my personal experience, there's a misconception that people might have that the infrastructure might not be great. But trust me, when you go to these areas, most of the roads are better than the ones that you find in many big parts of the country. Because I spent some time there, and the infrastructure that has been built in the past few years, that is great. People that live there have taken care of that infrastructure very, very well. So there is actually a lot of infrastructure related development that has happened in those areas. Now, because of this specifically, if you actually see, a lot of focus has been given on the northeast part of India, and deservingly so. It's a beautiful part of the country, and I highly recommend, whenever you have the time, do visit. It's a beautiful part of the country. Whenever you go, you mostly have a great time. Go visit Sikkim, go northern Sikkim, Gangtok, go to Meghalaya, go to Dowki Lake, etc. So what has happened is, the problem with northeast part of India was that if you had to go there, the connectivity was not that great. So, for example, now Sikkim has its airport and everything is fine. But when I went to Sikkim, for example, we did not have a direct flight to Sikkim. So from Delhi, we landed in Siliguri. In Siliguri, then by road, then you have to go. So now what has happened is, in order to boost connectivity, what the government has done is, Government of India has launched a new airport, Greenfield Airport in Arunachal Pradesh. Now, what is Greenfield? See, infrastructure projects are of usually two types. There is greenfield projects and there is brownfield projects. These are the two types of project that you actually see. Now, greenfield basically means something built from the scratch, something that is new. Nothing was there. There was no airport earlier. It all started from scratch. That is called a greenfield project. Brownfield means there was earlier an airport, old airport, or used by, let's say, armed forces. It's renovated now. It's made operational again. That will be called a brownfield. So that is basically repackaging something and making it work in the working condition again. Greenfield means something that is from the scratch, right from the scratch. Now, it's the first greenfield airport to be built in Arunachal Pradesh. It's called the Doni Polo Airport, and the government of India has actually put a lot of money into this. Now, there are a lot of things for which you can criticize the government, and you should criticize the government. It is the government's role that people have to criticize it. But the one thing that has actually done, that has actually happened good with this government, is they have focused a lot on infrastructure, especially the civil aviation infrastructure. Now, you might see, and you might see in your own areas, if you belong to a smaller city, now many smaller cities have an airport. This is under the Udan scheme, where the government of India has actually given a push to a lot of airports earlier. And where I will not tell which city I come from, but in my city also, the airport, we used to have a military airport. But now that military airport has been converted to civil airport, so now there is a direct flight connectivity there as well. So a lot of civil aviation infrastructure has been given a push by the government. Now, why this happens is, number one, it obviously gives jobs to the people in that area. It makes it easy for people to go there, come out of there. Tourism becomes much better. Now, when you have more tourism, it automatically creates more jobs. When you, let's say, visit a place, you will stay in the hotel, you will get a cab, you will have a tourist guide, you will go to places, buy stuff. So a lot of that eventually adds up to the economic activity. And this is what the government has been doing. Especially, remember, building infrastructures, not just airports, building good infrastructure is especially important in those areas where there are, let's say, insurgency problems. Why? Because a part of insurgency is because people don't have good economic opportunities, because people don't have good jobs, because people don't have any other resource to earn the money. Then they go towards other avenues to earn money. They fight against the government. So giving a push to infrastructure in challenging areas is always something that is a top priority for any government. And this government specifically has also been doing this as well. Now, as I said, the government of India has been making a lot of projects or introducing a lot of projects, especially for the development of the northeast part of India, and they have been successful in doing that as well. For example, I'll just give you a few examples. The government of India approved Northeastern Council scheme, and whatever the continuing scheme, whatever existing schemes were of the previous government, none of them have been cancelled. All of them have continued. Government has spent 4,500 crore rupees for the next 3 years for the northeastern part. Then we also have a lot of central sector schemes coming up in the area where 100% government funding has been given. We have the Northeastern Road Sector Development Scheme, again under which the government of India has been sending a lot of money. So infrastructure push has been given to these areas. As I said, Arunachal Pradesh Airport, before that the Sikkim Airport came into the picture. Then we also have a lot of waterway connectivity through Assam that is building up. So a lot of these are great signs that are coming up for the government and for the northeastern part of the country. Also, I'm sure you might have known about the Kaladan multimodal project. If not, this is a small homework from my side. After the class ends, do read about Kaladan multimodal project. I'm sure many of you already know about this. If you don't know about this, do read about this. This is again an infrastructure project that the government of India has actually built so that the northeastern states have a better connectivity. Do read about the Kaladan multimodal project as well. Now, a kind of question that you can expect here is pretty simple, straightforward. Development is often the best answer to insurgency. Elaborate. So, this is a kind of question that you can actually have. Let me see if I have some questions from you before we move on to the last topic for this webinar. I have a question. How government knows and keeps a check on cash payment to political parties of more than 2,000? So it is not the government's responsibility to keep a check on political donations. It is a responsibility of the Election Commission of India, because government also at the end of the day is a political party only. Government doesn't keep a check. It is the Election Commission of India that has to keep a check. So if you say how they keep a check is, a lot of people donate money to political parties so that they can get tax exemptions. Political parties also will get tax exemption on all their income if they report it to Election Commission. If they are not reporting it, if they are found guilty, then there can be serious punishment action taken against them by Election Commission, and they don't want to take that chance. But yes, if the political parties really want to hide their donation, I don't think it's a problem for them. They can do that. But the responsibility to track that is with the Election Commission of India. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. The last topic that we have for you is a short topic, a topic that says Indira Gandhi Prize has been awarded to Pratham. Now, I'm not sure how many of you know about Pratham. If you work in the field of education by any chance, especially at the school level, if you work in the field of education, the probability is you would have heard the name Pratham. It's one of the biggest players in the education sector in India. It's a very, very well-known NGO. If you have not heard the name, then I'll tell you where you would have heard it. In the newspapers, every few months, you get those kind of news reports that say 50% children in class 8 can't read class 2 English, 80% children in class 5 can't do addition subtraction. You hear these kind of news, right? What is that news? Where does that come from? That comes from a report that is published by Pratham. It's called the ASAR report. Very, very famous report. ASAR stands for Annual Survey of Education Report. Annual Survey of Education Report. So it's a very, very, very important report. So important, and not important for your examination even. So important that even the government of India, when they make their education policies, when they decide on their policies, they also take a help of this report. So it's said to be very authentic. They check the learning levels of children across the country and they present the report. It's the Pratham NGO. I personally have worked with them, so I know how they work. I have many friends working there. So basically, if you look at their history, how they started was they started by printing storybooks. Now the problem, now it's a much better situation, but few years back the problem was that the storybooks in India, the storybooks that they had to read were all Western storybooks. Means the characters were Phillips, John, Mark, and they were eating marshmallows. So Indian children did not know what is a marshmallow. They did not know who are these children, because the culture was very different. They were made for those students or those children. So now what Pratham started was they started making Indian storybooks in the context of India, and they sold it at a very, very cheap price. Very cheap price. Even today, you can get Pratham storybooks at 15-20 rupees. Very good quality storybook. That is how they started. Now what they do is they have collaborated with a lot of schools. They train the teachers in the schools how to teach better. They also make sure that the school's entire learning outcome increases, and they present these kind of reports, also the ASA report, in which they show or they highlight what is the learning level of children across the country. So the reason why they are in the news is that they have been given the Indira Gandhi Prize for Education. Now, what is the Indira Gandhi Prize? First of all, it is not a prize given by the government of India. So please remember that. It is, the full name is Indira Gandhi Prize for Peace, Disarmament and Development. This is instituted in the memory of Indira Gandhi by a trust called Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust, started in 1986. Whoever wins the award gets 25 lakh rupees with a citation. Citation means kind of a certificate. Many people and organizations in the past have won this. It has been given to individuals and organizations working in the field of either international peace, development, scientific discovery, etc. That is how the prize is awarded. Pratham NGO, as I said, is a deserving winner. They have been working in this field for a long, long time, but mainly they have been given this award for their role in student education at the time of the lockdown, especially. When in the lockdown period, the education was disrupted, they helped by having a lot of initiatives. They helped the teachers, training them on how to use online tools. They also helped children, especially from the disadvantaged background. As I said, the most famous thing about Pratham is ASA report, Annual Status of Education report. They are the ones who take out a survey of 6 lakh Indian rural children, and they tell about their learning outcome, the learning deficiency, etc. Their reports are taken into consideration by the government of India as well, when the government of India makes its policies with regards to education, especially education of children at the level of the school. It's a very fact-based news, nothing much to actually understand here. Let's try and see if you can answer this question as well. Read this carefully. Read this and then I'll start the time. Should we start? Read this. Should we start? And your time is up. 34% people got this right. Two statements are correct. The first statement is correct, was first awarded in 1986. This is correct. Second is also correct. National and international nominees are also considered. It's not just for India. Third is wrong. As I told you earlier as well, it is not just awarded by the government of India. Government of India has nothing to do with it. It is an memorial trust built in the name of Indira Gandhi. That trust awards a prize. The government of India, Ministry of Culture, etc., they don't have anything to do with the price. So it's not the government of India. It's actually the Indira Gandhi Memorial Trust that we talked about. So first and second, two statements are correct. Other statements are wrong. This brings me to the end of the topics that I want to discuss. I do have a few minutes in my hand, so if you want, I can take a few questions. Okay, I have a question. Some international recipients, Mikhail Gorbachev, who recently passed away, the USSR leader, which led to the disintegration of USSR, he was also awarded this prize. So yes, there are multiple international personalities that have been given this prize. Then I have a question. Who gave the money to Pratham for work? See, these NGOs get money from donors, people who really want to do something good for the society. They donate to NGOs. Plus, if you donate to NGOs, you get tax benefits as well. There are many companies that donate to NGOs. For example, companies compulsorily have to donate 2% of their profit of the last 3 years. Companies above a certain level, under the CSR rule of the government of India, they have to donate that much money. So 2% of the company's profit for many big companies is a huge amount of money. They donate these to NGOs, so they also work there. Okay. Anything else? Okay, I have a question. Why CCP index is of 2023, not 2022? It's still 2022, right? It's still 2022, right? Obviously, you don't have to ask that question. I don't know. Maybe they have given a projection of the next year. Uh, I can't tell you a reason for that because the official report that has come out is from, it says it's from 2023 only. So not that I can actually give this explanation. They are the one. Maybe it's about how in the next coming year they are projecting the countries to perform. Let's see what else. I was getting a question, who publishes this index? The CCP index is mainly published by an NGO. It's a German NGO. It's a German NGO which is called Watch Climate Institute. So it's a German NGO. It's not a government of India organization. Difference between electoral and normal bonds. Normal bonds are way to raise money from the market. You would have read this in economics. When companies or governments have to raise money from the markets, they issue normal bonds. Electoral bonds are very different. They are to donate money, not to raise money. Normal bonds, you get your money back with interest. Electoral bonds, you don't get your money back or anything. Then I have a question. Does this concept of data fiduciary also apply to any local or regional firm or enterprise or any private individual? Not private individual. If you are giving your data to private individual, no, that would not apply there. But yes, to websites, social media websites, that is where they will apply. If you're physically transferring your data to someone, or if you're transferring your data to an individual, no, that will not apply here. Then I have a question. Why electoral bonds come in 1 lakh only 2,000 can be donated? No, I didn't say they come in only 1 lakh. They come in multiples of 1 lakh. So they come in multiples of 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, and 1 crore. So yes, it's not that they have to come in 1 lakh only. Veena is saying rate of population growth is decreasing. Is it a good or a bad indicator? I would say it's a good indicator. It would have been bad because, see, anyways, we are short of resources on Earth. If the rate of population growth is still increasing, it's a very bad sign. It's a good sign that the population is stabilizing or population growth rate is decreasing, because at the end of the day, we are putting so much pressure on natural resources that we better control the rate of growth of population sooner rather than later. So I would say that it's a pretty good sign. Okay. Then I have one more. It is mostly debated over the news. India is at a transition stage of demographic dividend. How can we reap the benefits out of it? I hope when you say we, you mean India as a country. See, demographic dividend means when you have more than half of the population in the working age group, the young population. The problem with India is just having young population will not work. If that young population is just making Instagram reels and watching reels and doing nothing else, that will not help. If any country like India has to take advantage of that, they have to ensure skill development. Because if there are a lot of young people who don't have skills, there is no use of those young people. So it has to be focus, has to be on giving them as much skills as possible so that they can contribute to the workforce, contribute to taxes, etc. Perfect. This brings me to the end of this weekly current affairs webinar. I hope you had a good time. You learned a lot of new things. We'll meet soon in the next webinar. I think that if I am right, yes, the next Thursday webinar also I will be taking. Perfect. So I'll meet you on Thursday, 8:30 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Jai Hind.